Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have our Thanksgiving edition of our Northern Virginia football update with me. Back with me again, I have Jason Sterling and Brian Westhoff. Jason is a Loudoun County guy. He's followed the Stonebridge program closely. His kids went there. Jason is it Goochland or Powhatan, Jason?
Goochland.
Always
You'll get that right someday, Julian. Don't
One
worry.
day I'll get it right. He's a Goochland native, with the JMU, big JMU fan. Really follows the high school sports closely. Great seeing you again, Jason.
Yeah, you too, Julian. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And Brian is Westhoff is I believe Woodbridge graduate. Who was a tennis player at Woodbridge, which makes him. What's that?
Potomac High School.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those are fighting words there, Brian. yeah. He's a Potomac High School graduate. He's a tennis player, which makes him qualified to talk about high school football in Prince William. But his kids did play football was it Forest Park, Brian?
Colgan and Osmond Park, yeah. And I used to run and coach a youth football league and coached in middle school, so I'm somewhat qualified for football.
Okay, so your qualifications are legitimate. But Brian's also a UVA guy. But anyway, Brian, good to see you again.
Good seeing you. Thanks, Julian.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping by this time of year we can just talk about football. And December the VHSL or Fairfax County cleared Hayfield to play, so I thought that was over. And then we had the VHSL stepped up in the 11th hour and banned them from the playoffs. So then I thought that was over. We're going to move forward. And then we went to court. The judge overturned it moments before game time in the regionals. So then here we go again. And then now yesterday we finally got closure in that Hayfield's principal withdrew the team from competition, which probably was the best result, because otherwise the courts or someone would have had to determine what to do here. And by Hayfield withdrawing, it's done. And right now the next question was someone has to get fired. We went from, I was like so happy we could start thinking about football, and you go in the Facebook groups, now someone has to get fired. The principal, the superintendent, the newly elected president, whatever. So people, it's never going to end, as I'm realizing. So what were your first thoughts yesterday? Did you kind of agree with me in that this situation, there had to be a smoking gun? We needed a big moment to happen to get closure, or are you guys still unsatisfied with how it ended? Or at least ended temporarily, at least. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can jump in, Julian. Look, this story's dominated high school football talk across the state. It's made national headlines. Unfortunately, I think for Virginia, over the last 6 or 7 months, and just when we think there was some closure on it, another door opened, and I think that's the thing that I'll probably take away from this. It's probably, at least in my lifetime, one of the largest stories, particularly around football, that we've seen, in the state in a long time. And, I just feel for all the kids that were affected by this. I think we all do. They're just seems like there were no winners in this. And in many cases, when these things happen, there never are. So I'm not sure it's over. I know, Hayfield's withdrawn from the playoffs, which I guess is, at this point is probably the right thing to do. I suspect there'll be some off-season noise around this as well. And, I always wonder where this takes us next, because each day we woke up with something, a different perspective, a different opinion on it. I hope that, all the adults that were in this think about the kids, in this whole scenario on both sides. And, we can start to put them first and what the next chapters in their lives are going to be, whether they go on to play college ball or whatever they decide to do. And, I think from our standpoint as fans, the story unfortunately is overshadowed, a lot of good football that's going on in the state right now. And maybe that's behind us, at least, from a football perspective, and we can really focus in on this. But I just, historically, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen it dominate and just have so many ebbs and flows and twists and turns. And I've been, like you guys, I've been around, high school sports and watching football in the state for a long time. And this is absolutely was probably the most dynamic story I've ever seen, frankly.
Yeah, it's crazy. How about you, Brian? What are your thoughts?
I think with this, I agree with Jason. It's dominated the headlines for sure for the entire season, actually, even in the preseason. I think one of the things, there's so many dynamics to this story. You have going across county lines, two-time defending champion. I don't think anybody's naive thinking that no other high schools throughout Northern Virginia are doing transfers, right? It's been happening for a long time. And I think that's absolutely part of the story. The journalists or reporters that have other interests besides just football and Hayfield certainly is playing in the story. I mean, this goes above just the football field, but ultimately, I don't know if there's closure. There's probably closure temporarily, at least probably from what the playoffs is concerned. There's certainly not closure on what's going to happen after this, right? And I think we'll continue to probably learn more, and it's probably going to extend beyond Hayfield. But at this point, I know, a handful of us were talking last night is they just need to really figure out how to handle this moving forward. VHSL I'm talking about and the counties and things like that, because this hasn't just been this year. This has been happening for years, right? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever, but I think it's basically opened, a whole kind of door into a lot of different things that they got to figure out how to take care of. For sure.
I think one thing that is lost, guys, is that it may be easy to blame this on the smoking gun, and Hayfield was a bad actor now that they got a little bit more evidence. And what gets lost is what Brian's referring to. This always goes on. We can name transfers, recent transfers, football, basketball, any sport. And so it's happening all over the place. The scale of this is something that we've probably never seen before, which is why it came to a head. But because of the way it's ending, we may not have the kind of reform, or at least the kind of clarity of rules that may be needed to go forward. And that's, I think, the thing that could be lost. I don't know. I know Michelle Reed has been talking about putting together some new rules in place, but I have a feeling we're going to all throw the book on AD Fritz and some people that were involved in this. And I think what's going to get lost is, what about the teams that have 3 starters on their basketball team out of 5 that are all transfers and 60% of the production? That's still going to go on. So I do feel like it. Do you guys see my point that we may lose some of our ability to put some rules in place?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, Julian. I mean, it is going to be whoever has to come up with the solution on this, and I don't know if there's a perfect one, has got their work cut out for them. I mean, this is to Brian's point, this has been a sort of a growing and escalating type of thing. I wouldn't say it's a problem. Again, I don't want to use that word, but it's been occurring, as we all know, in multiple high-level sports. And, the influence from the NFL or professional sports down to the collegiate ranks, which changed in that over the years. I think a lot of that observation, when people see that, hear about it, the transfer portal, NIL, that type of stuff, ultimately just always works itself downhill. And I think some of that, what we observe as fans of that, is starting to work its way into high school athletics across, probably not just across Virginia, but certainly across the entire country. And, it's a dynamic that we're either going to have to deal with and have some rules, particularly here in the state, as to, that are hard and fast, or we're going to be in situations like this where, you're going to pit one side against the other. And, there's probably, no rights in this, and something's got to be done, or we're going to be living in a chaotic time in high school sports. And I don't think that's healthy for for the student athletes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing I don't understand is, like, how do you design rules to prevent recruiting, quote unquote, right? Recruiting, like if a parent and a family decides the best situation for them is to move into a certain high school district to play for a particular coach in any sport, is that recruiting? Is there, I just don't know how you govern that and really define what recruiting is. And I think that's a large part of the story as well.
Yeah. Well, Brian, that reminds me of, whenever people talk about Hayfield and freedom, they always bring up Stonebridge, or they bring up Loudoun County, where you have tons of transfers. Mickey Thompson had this. What is the truth, Jason, about the transfers in Loudoun County? Is it true that it's much easier to move schools? It's my understanding, if you're any school before 9th grade, you can go there without any penalty, and as long as you provide your own transportation and you're eligible. But is the transfer numbers really so profound in Loudoun County that it's been an advantage for those schools?
Yeah, it's a great question, Julian. I don't know the full rules behind the counties. I mean, and I think that's part of the problem. I think you've got different counties, even in a similar geography, Northern Virginia, for example, or you take the Virginia Beach area or the greater Richmond metro area, counties have their own sort of, set rules within that, right? And that becomes part of the problem. In Loudoun County, similar to Fairfax, you got a lot of schools that are close. You're not, some of these kids, if they're moving around, they're moving 3 miles. They're not really going that far. You're not packing up the entire, house at a single time and moving it. I mean, you're literally, getting a townhouse, and as these condos and townhouses have been built, it's pretty easy to go from one place to another. So, with regards to Loudoun County specifically, there's certainly, kids that move in and out of zone districts and, go from one school to another. Whether or not, they move residency or not, it's hard to say. I mean, I think, that's what VHL has to try and prove, is that you actually change residency. You are now physically sleeping at this address full time, and you're no longer at this address. But that can become very gray. And how do you prove that? What type of investigation do you do? Do you want to really deal in the, people's personal homes and go look and check someone's bed to see if it's unmade? I mean, it becomes it's a tough situation all around. And I think it's one that I don't know the answer to, Julian. I really don't. And I think as these athletes have, really focused on what they can do next, a college career where they can get a paid scholarship, for many of those families, to Brian's point, that's important. That means of an income that their family can live on and, and still get an education at a college is extremely important to a lot of these folks. So they look at it. A lot of these are looking at the next step, the big picture, the long-term thing for a kid. What's best for that kid, to grow and mature and learn and maybe play in the college ranks, or maybe even go on past that. There's some merit as to why people would move, and try and get more scholarship offers, more looks, more film on the kid, more activity playing, those types of things. So.
Well, it's more than scholarships now, because I'm sure Jeff Overton is probably getting a couple $100,000 to play at Tech next year. So it's only scholarships to build for the future. It's money in the pocket now. Brian, you're a sage observer of Prince William football. I know you're very well connected. Your kids played. I know you know all the coaches and stuff because you coach yourself. What has been the impact of the rise and then fall of Freedom? So Freedom is a 80% Latino school or so, maybe 70%. It's not the perfect demographic for high school football, but they built this incredible program, and it kind of took the air out of everything else in Prince William. I know your son was on the other side of that buzzsaw and lost some huge, had some huge deficits against them. Is it tough? What is the pluses and minuses for a program like Freedom to come to a county? Did it really make high school football even more important and raise the stakes, or did it discourage other schools in the area? And then when Coach Overton left, what happened then? So give us kind of the evolution of Prince William.
It's probably all of the above, right? I think for probably a period of 7 years or so, Freedom dominated Prince William County football, particularly on the eastern side of the county. It really kind of set that district on its side. Big time scores. I think kids, when they're going up into 9th grade, playing in youth football for Coach Overton, things like that, definitely wanted to follow kind of the Freedom zone, using the potential specialty programs to get to that school, all above board, right? But like kind of lining up. I think it also probably had an impact on the other schools throughout the county that they needed to up their game, particularly the ties to the youth football community for sure, using that as kind of development and kind of pipeline. It's happened into the middle schools, things like that. So I think it's probably was good in the long run when Overton left for Prince William County football. You saw on the eastern side, particularly the competitiveness with Garfield and Woodbridge and some of the other schools. I think you had a lot more parity in the county. I think teams like Patriot and Battlefield have been really great teams the last few years, but they just couldn't get through that buzzsaw of Freedom. So I think from a competitive standpoint, it's actually been really good. You got 19 teams now that are probably on a little bit more of a level playing ground, in terms of competitiveness. But at the end of the day, I think it was a good thing overall with the Freedom run for sure. So, we'll see.
Yeah. And then we have Patriot alive this year. With the real now that Hayfield's out, with a real chance, to advance. I did want to talk real quickly, and then I promise you I'll get to football, guys, about the Fairfax County Times. Now, I'm sure one of the biggest critics, and I think what's also lost in this, if a newspaper or organization picked any of us and wrote articles about us every week, they could bring just about any one of us down. There is no doubt if they got a hold of our text, if they had that kind of enthusiasm about getting into our lives, it can ruin just about anybody. I think that's lost in here. There have been so many allegations that they leveled against Coach Overton about his business license, about the bullying, lots of stuff that had nothing to do with that. They were just trying to find something. Well, they ended up getting a smoking gun, and it was probably their enthusiasm in the end that brought Hayfield down. Not that Hayfield, maybe they deserved it. I'm not sure, but it was definitely Fairfax County Times, their stick-to-itiveness that helped bring them down. I'm afraid that gets lost in this. That if that microscope was on any of us could be in trouble. Does that occur to you guys, or you think that's just the lawyer and me being a little bit too sensitive?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in because I've been very critical of the Fairfax Times as well. If you look at kind of what's transpired over the 6 or 7 months, it's clear that there was definitely a bigger agenda than high school football in Hayfield, right? And that this story was going to be used as a platform to really promote that. A lot of what was uncovered during the reporting, absolutely valid. Screenshots of text, things like that, but somewhere along the line continued to take all kinds of different paths. And that's kind of what doesn't sit well with me. It definitely was an attack on Fairfax County Public Schools, and it felt like it was a platform to attack Fairfax County Public Schools, the superintendent, and things like that. I saw a post the other day, somebody put, hey, the reporter really is a activist, not a reporter. And that kind of always struck with me, right? Is if you look at the history and take your lens off of whatever bias you have about the story, that was clear throughout the thing, the whole entire thing. So that was just a bad kind of, I don't know, observation throughout the thing that I had, and sounds like you had as well, Julian.
Yeah, I just feel like it, but for the grace of God goes the rest of us, or whatever the saying is. How about you, Jason? Do you have any thoughts on that, or are you worried about?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know any of the specific folks that were involved in that. At the Fairfax County Times that really dug into this deeply. But obviously, from an outside observation standpoint, there was definitely a mission here to try and uncover whatever they could. I mean, if Coach Overton forgot to cut his grass for 3 weeks because he was, out of the country, I'm sure that would have been shown as a picture that his grass was growing too much during the summer. It's just, I think at some point this is a larger media thing that we consume in our society. You go to one side of something or the other, and when you're on the other side of it, it's all about just angling to punish the other side wherever you fall in that situation. And I think that's in today's world with everybody's got a digital footprint on everything, right? So any text messages, any emails, any communication is going to be captured. Somebody's going to be able to find that. There's no hiding that stuff, and that's a tough environment because you are right. I mean, if Brian seems like a great guy, you're a wonderful guy, Julian. I'm sure if somebody dug hard enough, there's going to be stuff that you don't want to get out. As am I, humbly.
Yeah.
There's stuff there, just from the last 50 years of my life that, it wasn't perfect, and I think we all try and do things to make sure we're doing the right things, but you can't win in these situations. If someone wants to find something bad, they will, or they'll create something small, and that will just grow into a major apocalyptic event for whoever's looking for it. So, and that's the tough thing about this. I think it did turn into more of from a technical football story and what was right and what was wrong to a witch hunt around Coach Overton.
Yeah, it was something that it's almost unfortunate that they came out to really tip the scale. I mean, that was the tipping point yesterday. We saw that we had that text in our hands before it went public, and we all knew what was coming. It It was almost like we were in our little text chain that we have. It was, and I hope that's not discoverable. It was the quiet before the storm, and here we go. Jason, I don't think you're a big Facebook guy, but I have a Facebook group called Nova Legends, and it was primarily a basketball group, and it's very vibrant, great community of former players and coaches and stuff. But I started football like 4 or 5 years ago as well, and I had some help with some great former players as well. And it's always been a great kind of a low key discussion of football. It's never been like Jay Golson's group or even what's our other buddy's group, Brian and Prince William. Alex's group. Sorry, Alex. Alex's great group. This is much more low key. And as soon as Coach Overton went to Hayfield, the group it became a Hayfield. It became the Hayfield group and the Hayfield haters group. That's all it's been. And I would go to a football game, take pictures of a game, and post them. No one would even comment on them. Some of the pictures are really good. I would post, a interview with a Northern Virginia legendary football player, or even the Titans, the 71 Titans. People looked at it a little bit. All people want to do is to talk about the Hayfield situation. The last week, I think I got like 150 new members. I usually get maybe 10, 20 a year, maybe. And they all want to talk about Hayfield, either slamming Hayfield or defending Hayfield. There's really nothing else going on. And and you know what? I'm doing it right now. Let's get to the football because I'm falling into the same situation. So let's go to 6C because there's games tonight, or at least there's a game tonight. 6C is the division that Hayfield is forfeited out of. And they Hayfield had beaten Edison brutally and was to play Fairfax tonight. This whole region had been pushed back a little bit because Hayfield was reinserted in the playoffs, and Robinson, an 8 seed, was taken out, and Hayfield was given the first top seed again. So anyway, we do have one game tonight, and that's going to be West Springfield and Lake Braddock. It's just an interesting matchup because Lake Braddock beat West Springfield easily early in the year, but West Springfield just overturned a 43-28 loss to 43-25 loss to South County and beat them 41-12. So this West Springfield team, and they're perennially tough, might be a contender in the offseason, in the postseason. Lake Braddock had a 56-6 win against Mount Vernon, and they look like they're on form as well. So that game is tonight, West Springfield, Lake Braddock. So first of all, did you guys see, or did you guys were able to look at any of the quarterfinal game? Was any of the quarterfinal games, the West Springfield, South County, or the Lake Braddock, Mount Vernon games?
Well, a little bit of the West Springfield, South County game, and they did flip the script in that game from their game early in their season. I mean, for me, Julian, this is a classic 2-3 matchup. I believe Lake Braddock, in my humble opinion, is a little better than West Springfield, but West Springfield seems to be coming on right now, exactly as you stated there, and I think they've got enough confidence that they can go out and beat Lake Braddock. I think everybody, sort of in this area, was looking up at Madison and trying to jockey for this number 2 spot, and West Springfield's got a lot to prove here. I think if they can beat a Lake Braddock, they'll be able to ring that bell that they're here to potentially stay. So. I lean Lake Braddock. I think they were a little more balanced offensively, and I think that'll, that home field, potentially means a difference here in a game like this.
Yeah. I think the Lake Braddock West Springfield regular season matchup wasn't too lopsided though. I think
it was 9 points
or something.
Yep.
So,
2 scores.
It's probably in the playoffs, all bets are off, right? Like I think it's probably going to end up being a good game. And if you look at West Springfield's schedule. They're probably the one team, and it's probably not saying much because the district was pretty weak, but they actually, when they played Hayfield for the first week, I believe, I think that was their schedule. It was, it wasn't the 70-some to nothing blowout that you'd see. I think it was like 40-some to a touchdown or something like that. So take that data point for what it's worth, but it should be a good game for sure. But like Jason, I probably lean towards Lake Braddock as well.
Yeah. Well, let's quickly.
Julian, do we know? I have a question. Do we know if Fairfax is straight through now? Has that been decided? I know this is all hot off the press as of yesterday's announcement about Hayfield withdrawing.
Matthew Hatfield from Virginia Preps is reporting that Fairfax is through to the final. but
Okay.
maybe he's assuming that. I'm not sure. But Matthew is usually pretty accurate, as you guys know. So he's assuming that. And I think it's probably a safe. I don't really know what else they can do at this point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
unless you want to reseed and have Fairfax play West Springfield
And
because
the
they're lower
problem
seeds.
is the schedule's already jacked up, right? So
Yeah.
if you do something besides let Fairfax through, that's going to continue to jack up the schedule for sure.
I think so.
I suspect that would be the thing they would do. I mean, you're right. We're already behind schedule, behind the chain, so to speak, in this. And then if another team that's already lost comes by, they haven't been practicing. They've probably turned in their uniforms. So it would probably be a logistical nightmare to have anybody but Fairfax go through. I was just curious.
Yeah. Well, guys, Fairfax beat West Potomac 29-19 in the quarter. It was a great game. I caught it online. Lots of big plays. Fairfax had their chances. I'm sorry. West Po had their chances. They definitely could have won this game. But Fairfax seems to be in pretty good form now. They've been a very consistent program over the last several years. I don't think they have the D1 prospect this year that they've been lucky enough to have in years past. But I would not look past a team like Fairfax. Fairfax is going to get some rest. It looks like they're going to advance to the final. And it looks like they're going to play the winner of Lake Braddock and West Springfield. We're probably not going to be able to talk before that game because I think that game will be either Friday or Monday. Would Fairfax would probably be the underdog in that game. I think they probably lost to both teams or they beat West Springfield. But anyway, would Fairfax have a chance against the winner of West Springfield and Lake Braddock?
Yeah, I think they might, Julian. Again, it's, you can make two arguments here. You can say, well, that, they're not going to be able to run a lot of plays against, somebody here for a week, another opponent outside of practice. Does that hurt them? But, you're also at the point of, hey, we can get healthy, and who knows what happens in the Lake Braddock West Springfield matchup. Knock on wood, hopefully it won't happen, but a key player or two goes down with injury, you could have an advantage Fairfax at that point. So that could go one of either way, I think. I do think they've got a shot. I mean, they're historically a good program. And like you said, they've had probably more college and D1 talent the last few years than they have this year. So that may make a difference. But I think any of those three teams that are left there between Lake Braddock, West Springfield, and Fairfax, there's not a lot of separation there. I would lean still Lake Braddock or West Springfield in that game. But I think we'll have to see the result of that game to maybe make a better determination of how Fairfax would fare against one of the other.
Yeah. Brian, do you agree that 3 or 4 day turnaround might be a disadvantage also for Lake Braddock and West?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, think about what what is the game tonight, I believe?
Tonight, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so think about what the Fairfax coaching staff's going to be doing tonight versus what the Lake Braddock or West Springfield coaching staff's going to be doing.
Mhm.
Fairfax is focused on their next opponent being the winner. They're going to be at that game. They're going to be game planning. They're going to have their own film ready to go tomorrow morning. The other two teams, their coaching staffs are going to be recovering from that game and kind of starting to look at, the next week starting tomorrow. So right there, Fairfax has somewhat of an advantage from a planning standpoint and a prep standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, let's move on to thanks, guys. The 6D, which is a completed bracket. They were not involved at all in the Hayfield controversy. We have 2 undefeated teams in this final on Saturday. This is a can't miss game to me. You have Washington and Liberty. I don't think they've been to a regional final in many years. I'm not sure about that.
1975, Julian.
Is that right? Yes.
1975.
Yeah. And this is Madison. Madison's going for, I believe, 4 straight Northern Regional Championships, which is a 6D region. Madison comes off a 35-28 game against Westfield, a rival that they always have to play in the playoffs. Westfield, again, I don't know if you could say they could have won, but that game could have, gone further, maybe even to overtime. And Washington Lee is coming off a 20-14 win against Langley. And Washington Lee and Langley had big quarterfinal wins. I'm willing to bet, guys, that the Liberty district in football is much stronger than people think. And I think people are assuming that Washington Lee, they built their undefeated record on an easy schedule. I think the Liberty is going to end up being a strong conference. And I think this is going to be a really nice game. First of all, let's start off with Washington and Liberty and Langley. Did you guys get a chance to watch any of that?
I did not get a chance to watch any of that game, Julian, unfortunately. But, for any team to do something they haven't done since 1975, and actually this is the most wins in their school history. They had never gotten to 12 wins. And that school, the old Washington Lee School, and they've been around for over 100 years. So you're talking about, decades and decades of going back in history, and they've never reached that 12-win milestone. So I agree with you a little bit on the schedule. I think at the beginning of the season, we're like, oh, they're playing an easy schedule. It's easy to be 5-0, but 6-0, 7-0, 10-0, 12-0, you've got to go out and beat who's in front of you. And they've been able to do that. Now, arguably or unarguably, their toughest test is going to be, this coming game against Madison. Madison's sort of the cream of the crop in the Fairfax, Northern Virginia area right now. And they've proven that time and time again. But, shout out to Coach Josh Shapiro in Washington Liberty, a different Josh Shapiro than the governor of Pennsylvania. But he has got this program. I think he's been there since like 2007 as head coach. And, he's been steadily having that program improve. And it's great to see. I mean, this is one of the best stories. Not just in Northern Virginia, but I think across Virginia high school football, as much as we talk about the impact of the Hayfield story, and it's probably overshadowed something like this. I mean, this is a team that played football for over 100 years, and they've never gone 12-0. So, that's very commendable. And I think Madison needs to be on their game. I will tell you that this team can score. They're a good balance between running and passing, and they will attack you. They will get after you offensively. So,
it's interesting, Jason. Washington Liberty. Most people don't realize this, and I didn't. And I'm from here, Northern Virginia. When they were built, and I learned this through my interviews, when the county started to fill out around Arlington, Alexandria, those were considered country schools. So Fairfax is an old school, but when they first started getting a population, and when Falls Church High School, Edison High School, Hayfield High School, all these other, these were country schools. Obviously, Herndon was a country school, but even like Marshall, Washington Liberty was the big city school. They were great in football. They were great in basketball. They were a big school. And I didn't realize they were so dominant in sports just because their other ones were considered kind of like country schools. And Washington Liberty had this long tradition, and they had a population center as well. And also Yorktown to some degree, and Wakefield as well. But they were dominant in football and basketball in the 60s. Brian, any thoughts on this bracket? The Washington.
I first started following Washington Liberty probably 3 years ago. Elijah Hughes, my youngest son was quarterback, and we scrimmaged Washington Liberty then, and that was the first time I had really paid attention. And I sat there watching my son run for his life from Elijah Hughes, chasing after him. So I've been following him the last couple of years. But you look at the game last week, it was kind of interesting that Washington Liberty entered the fourth quarter down. I think they were down like 7-3 or something against.
They had 3 points. Yep.
Yeah. Kind of came back, and so it should be a great game. With Madison, I think Washington Liberty's coming in again. Agree with Jason, probably somewhat of an easier schedule than Madison, but been playing tight games. So who knows?
Elijah's little brother is playing. Is he a Division I prospect as well? Have you guys heard of?
I don't know. I know he was Defensive Player of the Year, I believe, in their district. Ben Hughes, I think. Jason, I don't know if you've been watching or tracking him, but
I haven't tracked his offers. I do know of him in the heritage with his brother there. I probably should have looked before we got on this, but I don't know if he's got Division I offers, so I don't want to say he does. I don't want to say he doesn't, but he's definitely a college prospect. I think he's got the bloodlines, and he's a headsy player. So,
well, let's get to Madison. Madison is a great football team. They're not the most dominant team in terms of talent and in personnel, but they're so well coached. They execute so well. They're going to make the big plays. They're not going to make mistakes that kill you. They have a senior quarterback, Cale Yates, who's won a lot of games for them. He's just amazing guy. Kind of an undersized quarterback, not unlike Freedom's quarterback the last few years. Kind of similar, kind of a scrappy little quarterback. What was the Freedom's quarterback name, Brian?
Tristan Evans.
Tristan Evans. And not unsimilar to him. And then they have Dominic Nisley, who rumor has it he might be headed to James Madison. I know that he decommitted from Boston College at first and then Coastal Carolina. Great running back. I think he was first team All-State kick returner at least once, maybe twice. These two guys are the keys to the offense, but their defense I interviewed Coach Counts last week. I think he had 90% of his defense back from last year. So Madison is solid on both sides. They're a great football team, but I don't think they're the kind of personnel that they can just show up and beat Washington Liberty. I think this is going to be a great football game.
Yeah, agreed. I think with Madison, it's funny, me being a Prince William County guy, I've always seen Madison as the battlefield of Fairfax County, right? Great youth program that feeds that, great set of coaches, kids that grew up playing together and everything, and just flat out well coached. I think the difference with Madison and Battlefield, though, is Madison's tested. They have a really tough schedule all the time versus, you hear critics of Battlefield's schedule that they don't schedule tough teams out of conference. I think Madison's the complete opposite. So they're always going to be coming in the playoffs and going to be a force to reckon with. They've been there, the last few years. Fell short, but who knows what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, they played a real good game against Freedom 2 years ago in the state final. The final score wasn't great, but anyone who saw that game, they made a lot of great plays, and they really held their own against an amazing team. So that game is a Saturday at 1 o'clock. And look, hats off to Westfield. Amazing season. So many talented players on that team. They've got they got players at skilled positions. But I'm going to freeze on the Duda. I think one of the running backs' name is
Duda. Is it Luca?
What's that?
Yeah, Duda's his last name. Yeah, the running back.
Jackson Duda. But they Jefferson Duda maybe. But they have 3 or 4 players in the running back and the wing back position that are just very dangerous. So they would have been a very worthy champion as well. Great season, first year coach, amazing job in your first year. Well, let's go to Brian's neck of the woods. Let's go to 6B, and this also includes the Stafford area. And the rumor has it that North Stafford and Stafford were the 2 of the toughest teams in the area. Battlefield was supposed to be tough, as every year. They're undefeated until the postseason. That's got to be frustrating for their amazing coach, Ken Hatfield, and assistant coach, Mark Cox. But they ended up Battlefield ended up losing 10-7 to Patriot, a team they had just beaten 29-7 weeks before. And a team, Patriot, that had lost to Garfield. No offense, you're a Potomac guy. But, 40-27 loss to Garfield is a surprising result in Prince William County football, I think. But anyway, here, and they also lost, the 35-7 to Colonial Forge early in the season, which they're going to have to turn that around, and that might work in their favor.
Closer, I believe, Julian. It was a 35. It was a closer game. The regular season matchup with Colonial Forge and Patriots, 35-27.
Oh, okay, I got that wrong. Sorry about that. Anyway, so what you guys think about the Patriot Battlefield game? That had to be a huge game.
Yeah, couple things. This is Patriots' first win over Battlefield since 2019. They had actually lost 7 in a row. Now, they always play each other regular season, and typically they see each other, much like basketball, right? They see each other in the postseason. So 7 in a row. So it was a good breakthrough for them. I think if you rewind 3 or 4 weeks ago, and you mentioned Patriots lost to Garfield, they were without their best player. So Jackson McCarter, who actually just decommitted to Villanova, I think he's potentially going to have some other D1 offers that are.
And he's back playing. He's back playing, right?
Not back playing. So you mentioned the Garfield loss. That was Patriots' first game without Jackson. So you can kind of see Coach Finnery has kind of got his players in line now and kind of figured out what to do with Tyler Knutson, their quarterback, and things like that moving forward without Jackson. So you look at the Battlefield game, and I watched the Gainesville Patriot game as well. You can see Patriots kind of peaking now. They got their offense going without Jackson, so it'll be interesting to see here against Colonial Forge. The thing with the Colonial Forge regular season matchup with Patriot, if I watched that game, it was probably the 3rd or 4th week, I believe, something like that in the regular season. Patriot was actually up at halftime, and then Colonial Forge kind of made a run, I think, in the 3rd quarter and kind of started to close the gap and everything. But with Colonial Forge, you're dealing with a coaching staff that's been there, tons of time. Bill Brown, legend, and as the defensive coordinator, his son John Brown. They've been there tons of times. They upset Battlefield last year, if you remember that, in the playoffs. So it's going to be a well coached game for sure.
Yeah. And McCarter is out for the season.
I believe he's out for the season.
Okay. Yeah. So Jason, did you take a peek at that game?
Yeah, the Patriot Battlefield game. What surprised me the most was that there were 17 total points scored in that game. I mean, I'm used to, sort of seeing these teams in a 35-28 game or 42-35, something like that. The whole Battlefield to 7 points. And I think Battlefield had a few people that were out, injury wise too. So maybe that had some effect on it, but that's a pretty good defensive effort from Patriot. And you're right, Brian. I mean, these teams, Battlefields typically come out on top, but the games have always been fairly close, for the most part. So I was just surprised at Battlefield only being able to put 7 points on the board against Patriots. So, and Colonial Forge, look, guys, I mean, they're a quiet 9-3, and they've lost some. They can score. I was looking at sort of their season scoring. They score in the 20s, 30s, 40s virtually every game. So, and that first regular season game when they did win 35-27, that's a lot of points to put on the board against a Patriot team that just held Battlefield to 7. So I don't know who's going to win this game. This is the thing about it. This is a 5-6 matchup in the playoffs. We don't see a lot of those. That's it sort of shows me the depth of that region. And the 1 through 6 or 7, it was top to bottom. It was pretty strong. So, and when you can have a 5 and a 6 come out of that and play for a regional championship, it tells me more that the region has a lot of really good teams embedded in there between the North Staffords and the Battlefields and those types of teams. But tip of the hat to Patriot and Forge for coming out of that. And I could see this game going either way. To Brian's point, the regular season game was could have gone either way to Forge happened to come out on top by 8 there at the end.
Well, let's congratulate Coach Finnerty. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Julian, look at the common theme though between Colonial Forge and Patriot. They both the teams they played in the regular season, being Battlefield and North Stafford, they lost in the regular season, beat them in the playoffs. Right. So the theme there is, hey, you got a great coaching staff that's going to make adjustments, going to figure out game planning as far as the next game. So it should be a really, really good matchup for sure.
Yeah, Coach Counts told me last week, you don't necessarily want to win that game in the regular season. You do while you're there, but it doesn't make you any more likely to win that playoff game because sometimes you have a harder time motivating your kids, and sometimes it makes you complacent. Are you really going to change things if you won anyway? So that first game, it could be deceptive in terms of predicting the result of the subsequent game. I do want to congratulate Coach Finnerty. A great job. I know it's huge for you. When you think about it, if you're Colonial Forge and Patriot, you're one game away from state. There's no freedom this year, and you're playing a 5 or a 6 seed to go to the state. It'll be state semifinals, right, guys? So that's amazing. That game's at 2:00. I believe it's at Colonial Forge, guys.
Patriot, I believe.
Patriot.
Okay. Yep. That's it.
Yeah, Patriot's the 5, Forge is the 6.
Okay, so the game was at Patriot, guys. If people want to go. So look, that's going to be great. I may try to sneak down there for that game. Let's quickly go to 6A. And I know, we don't know these teams as well, even though we know their reputation, obviously. That's going to be an old school matchup. There's change all around, but 6A is more the same. You got Highland Springs, who's had an up and down year, but their losses have all been quality losses. But they're clearly not the team they've been over the last several years, at least. And Oscar Smith is back. Still, after reeling from that loss to Phoebus 3 years ago, where they lost 48-0, I believe. They've had an incredible year. Their results have been flawless. Not sure if they played the same type of teams. They have not played the Mauries and the Phoebuses probably yet. But there are some tough teams down in the 7-5-7. You guys have any sense of who we can expect to come out of this matchup?
I'll give you my perspective on it, Julian, real quick here. What Chris Scott has done at Oscar Smith to get them back to an undefeated season's incredible. They're coming off 4 consecutive shutouts, so into this game. So defensively they are playing some of the best ball in Class 6 that you'll see. But I will tell you, this coaching matchup really intrigues me. I think you've got 2 of the better coaches in the state between Chris Scott and Lauren Johnson. watched Lauren Johnson in a number of games against Stonebridge. Bet against him at your own peril, is what I will say. So that team, Highland Springs, is always battle tested. They're always, this is the type of game they typically win, right? Just when you think, okay, they've only got a mediocre season going, they tend to pull these games out. But Oscar Smith's a different animal this year. I actually was looking at them thinking, okay, could they possibly give Hayfield a run this year? Now that Hayfield's out, I honestly would tell you that I think Oscar Smith is the best team remaining in Class 6. And I think the championship possibly could be theirs for the taking. Great teams remaining, including Highland Springs, Madison, Washington Liberty, a lot of Patriot, a lot of good teams. So we'll see. But great classic coaching matchup right here.
Yes, I would have Hayfield against Oscar Smith. I would have probably favored Oscar Smith only because Hayfield's schedule has been extremely weak. They only really played one tough team all year, and that was Riverdale Baptist, and they were amazing. And they did show the quality in that game. They had some mistakes that kept them from really being in the game. But I would have thought Oscar Smith would have been a little more battle tested for that big game. But with Jeff Overton on your team, anything's possible. I think he's two-time returning player of the year of the state. What about you, Brian? You have any thoughts?
Yeah, Julie, you mentioned battle test and Highland Springs being a down year, but if you look at their schedule and their 3 losses, I mean, Verina, Phoebus, and who was the other one?
I think
right? Like, but Marty, Verina, and Phoebus, the 3 losses. Talk about battle tested, right? they were certainly battle tested going into the Oscar Smith game. But yeah, I think Oscar Smith probably is back after a lull from the last couple of years, and lull, quote unquote, right? But yeah, they're probably the team to beat. But it should be a good game.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's go to Class 5. This is Jason's territory. It's largely a Loudon conference, and interesting. I saw Briar Woods against Riverside, and I really like this team. I know Jason is a person I real well. They got a couple of Division I signees on the team, a running back. They got some great receivers. Very exciting teams. It's high octane offense for sure. And every game is, like Jason calls it, a shootout when Briar Woods is playing. Anyway, they beat Massaponax 39-27. I don't know, Jason, you get a chance to look at that game a little bit, but how is Briar Woods looking coming into this state regional final?
Yeah, no, I think they're looking really good. Defensively is probably an area, that they've got to make sure they shore up their run defense, particularly as they go against Riverbend here. But offensive weapon wise, Briar can stack up with anybody in Class 5. They really can. They have a phenomenal receiver in Colin Capistrand, Brady Carmichael, the Navy commit, that quarterback, great athlete too. He'll probably end up playing, my guess would be linebacker, maybe safety linebacker type in college, that type of role versus quarterback, but really good athletes on that team. And I think you're going to see a really good game. I actually was at the Stonebridge Riverbend game, and Riverbend, I will tell you, I don't know if you guys know this, but they beat Stonebridge. They ended up winning by 14. It was 21 up until Stonebridge scored late there. They did not complete one pass in that game. They only threw one pass. They ran the ball so effectively, and they ran it down Stonebridge's throat. They've got a couple great backs. JoJo Thomas is the one that sort of comes to mind, but they've got another big guy that they put in. I can't quite remember his name, but it's probably about 6'2", running the football. And they just line up and they tell you what they're going to do, and they execute on it. I was unpleasantly surprised at how good Riverbend was in the running game. And I think that could give Briar Woods some fits here. I really do. I think Briar's got one of their holes, I think, is potentially their run defense. And if they can find a way to shore that up, I would suspect Briar probably has a slight advantage just because of their offensive firepower. But you've got a classic passing game with some run mixed in Briar Woods versus a dominant running game in Riverbend. So we'll see. That's a tale of 2 different types of teams here going at it. So it'll be interesting to see how the coaches can game plan for each other, Julian.
Jason, Briar Woods' running back got hurt against Independence. I know he's a Division I prospect.
He's back. Yeah, he's back. He's back. So
what's his name again? I can't remember his name.
I knew you'd ask. I was just drawing. I'll think of it.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem. Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot. Okay. Brian, have you peeked over the on 66?
A little bit. I guess I have not seen Riverbend play though. I had a question for Jason. Do they run a triple option offense, the
No,
running
it's a
game?
little
Or?
bit of a sort of a single wing set.
Okay.
But they had about four guys that carried the rock, and I think all four got over 50 yards rushing. I didn't get the final numbers, but I bet they had over 400 yards rushing against Stonebridge. They just moved the line. They're
Wow.
a very big, thick offensive line as well. I was surprised at that. They outsized a pretty good size Stonebridge defensive line. So if they can get that ground game going, I mean, they were churning out 5 to 10 yards of carry consistently.
Hmm.
I don't think I'd have to look at the film again. I don't think Stonebridge had one tackle for loss in that game, which is crazy. Not one. So they're a power running team. The quarterback, when he keeps it after five handoffs to one of the running backs through the A gap, he's very quick and he'll just sneak around the edge and he'll catch you off guard there. So they just a lot of different ways they run at you, and it's right in front of you, but it's really hard to stop. So
Jason,
I think
where's
Briar may have
Riverbend?
some trouble. I see this being a really high scoring game, guys.
Hmm.
Sorry to interrupt, Jason. Well, where's Riverbend?
Fredericksburg.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's in the city. It's in the town, or is it outside?
No, it's out. I think it's Route 3. If you get just 95 and just head out, it's maybe about 4 or 5 miles just west of I-95.
And do you think Stonebridge? You think Coach Colson's going to come back next year? Do you think horrible beginning to that season? Even though, to be fair, they lost to Dunbar, Baltimore, they lost to Quince Orchard. Let's be realistic here. But they really finished off their season on a high note. Do you think they have something to build on for next year?
I do, Julian. They had a real small senior class this year, the smallest I can ever remember. Coach Golson also, his son's he has two sons on the team. The junior, he'll be coming back as a senior, and he also his youngest is a freshman on the team as well. So he's got two kids to still, play some high school football. One with an additional 3 years. So I'm sure he'll want to try and finish that at Stonebridge. And I think the fans laid off a little bit as they started winning toward the back end of the season. So I haven't seen the schedule for next year, so I don't know if it's going to be as brutal. Mickey put together a couple brutal schedules, and Coach Golson got stuck with this one, unfortunately. So
It's the gift. It's the gift that keeps.
yeah, he was going to punish whoever came in after him just so his legacy could live on. So
Exactly. Well, that game was at Riverbend on Friday at 1 p.m. I think Jason's probably onto something. Briar can score some points, but when you play against a team that can run the ball and can keep possession, sometimes it can be tough. But high school football has changed. It's more about the high-powered offenses now. So that's going to be an intriguing matchup. You guys, should we go to Class 4 now? Class 4 is a great local matchup, local for Jason and me. It's Tuscarora, who's had one bad result this year against Indy, and then just is completely dominant the rest of the year, even though they probably haven't played the toughest schedule, but they had some tough wins. And then John Champ beat Briar Woods for I think early 7-6, and they beat Woodgrove, and I've seen Woodgrove play. I was impressed. They beat Woodgrove 44-21 in the regional semi. So we have a great local matchup between 11-0, 10-1. No doubt these are the two best teams in that region, guys. First of all, what do you guys think about John Champ? We haven't talked a lot about them, but everyone I know respects them.
yeah, good, really good team, up-tempo team, Julian. If you like to watch, and you don't see this a lot, up-tempo high school offenses, that's the team to go watch. I mean, they get up to the line, they know what the play call is, and they snap the ball with 15, 20 seconds left on the play clock. And their quarterback's really good. He's a Stonebridge kid originally, and went over in the offseason to Champ, Brendan Pena, and he's picked up a few offers here just because of his play this season here. But they are up-tempo, but they're going up against sort of a traditional hard-nosed defensive team in Tuscarora. That's what Tuscarora has been known for a lot over the last few years, being able to limit opponents to, just few yards at a time. So that'll be interesting to see. You got a good up-tempo offense going against a really sound defense. And I think those are the best two teams, obviously, in that region, 1 and 2 respectively. And I think you're going to see a really, really good game when this one's played this weekend.
Yeah. Well,
is this Champ's first year at Class 4 or
Second.
I think
second? Okay.
Second. They were there last year. Yeah, and they went from
I saw
six
them a
to
lot
four.
over the last few years. Their offense
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah, with all those new schools opening in Southern Loud, they were Class 6, so they dropped down 2 levels to when the realignment was done.
I think they're going back up to 5, though, aren't they?
I believe so. Yep.
What a mess.
I know.
Well, Tuscarora beat Loudoun County 34-7. Loudoun County's got some quality. Jeremiah Davis' son,
Yep.
he's a linebacker. I was impressed by Loudoun County. So the fact that they can beat them by 20, and those schools are less than 2 or 3 miles apart, so it's got to be a rivalry. So that's a fantastic game. Another game. There's so many great matchups this weekend. Let's hope we can catch some of those. Anything more? Or should we go to Class 3? Brian, anything else you want to ask about that game?
Yeah. You look at the across the state, the Class 4 outside of Champ and Tusky. Some of those teams, Dinwiddie, Verina, Phoebus. I mean, Class 4 is a good bracket. I'm interested to see what happens in those games.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. I mean, the lowest seed remaining in all of Class 4 right now is Salem, and we know what type of history they've got across football in Virginia. So they're a 4 seed, and they've had some mixed results this year. But to have that team as the lowest remaining team tells you there's a lot of good depth in Class 4 across all the regions. I don't think there's a single region that would say, hey, we don't have a shot at this thing. So I think Phoebus obviously would be the sort of the team to beat right now, as they have been for 40 some plus games. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, Class 3, we have a great a local team, Kettle Run, who beat a Armstrong from Richmond and come from behind win 36-34 to remain undefeated. They're going down to TJ. So that's going to be kind of a tough environment to go into Richmond. Country Boys going into the city. They're playing the undefeated TJ off a 38-7 win against Skyline. Kettle Run destroyed Skyline earlier in the year as well. So this looks like it's going to be a great matchup to even get out of the region. It's just an amazing contrast in styles. That game's Friday night at 7:00. Wow. So that should be it'd be easier to travel that far in a day game. So what do you guys think? You guys got any thoughts about Kettle Run? And have you guys followed them at all this year?
I own them, Julian. I haven't seen any of their games, unfortunately. They've been good the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, Kettle Run's a really good program. They can score a lot of points. But TJ, again, we may have talked about the last time you had us on, just the success of like city schools, and TJ's the prime example of that. Just a really bad team just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, really bad, and to be a number 1 seed now and actually have a shot at the Class 3 state championship. I think they're that good. They have really turned that program around, and it's great to see. So I think Kettle Run's got to bring their A game into this game to be able to pull out a victory here against TJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last few years, I mean, the Kettle Run's kind of been behind Brentsville. Brentsville made their run the last couple of years, getting through to the region and into the state, and ran up against Phoebus a couple times. But yeah, Kettle Run's rolling. For me personally, I'm rooting for him just because I grew up with the principal at Kettle Run, Mark Malloy's. Crossing my fingers that they have a breakthrough here for it and get into the state semis.
Hey, Brian, Kettle Run is just a mile or 2 from the Prince William border.
Right across the border.
Is it the same culture? Is that like these are the same type of kids? Or is Fauquier different than Prince William County in terms of culture?
It's very similar to Brentsville, kind of a rural type area. It's right out, as you go past Prince William County and into Fauquier and Warrenton County.
Yeah. Well, guys, look, I really appreciate your time. You guys are amazing football minds. You spend way too much time on this, guys. But I wanted to end with Thanksgiving memories. So in my household, my family is a uber sports family. My parents, we'd watch football games on Thanksgiving Day, but any time on a Sunday or Saturday, we are a sports family. When I was a kid, we would look for the local Turkey Bowl games in the area if I wasn't playing in a game. I grew up playing football. Sometimes we'd be alive, but we always played football. And then watching the game at Detroit and the game in Dallas, the 75 or 74 Clinton Longley game against when he beat the Redskins. This Roger Staubach got hurt. This guy no one ever heard of from San Diego State came in and won the game. A pass at the Hail Mary pass, one of the Hail Mary passes. Football Thanksgiving is all about football in my household and good food. It's when I met my wife the first time. Their family does not watch TV during dinner. Dinner is a very sacred time, family time. There's no TVs during dinner. And I remember the first time we invited them over to our house for Thanksgiving, and my mother put the TV on the table. I mean, because that's how important football is in our family. And I remember the look on my mother-in-law's face in horror. That's just sacrilegious in their family, but I think they've gotten used to our family. And that's the way it is. How about you guys? When you think about Thanksgiving, is football as big in your household as it is mine? And do you have great memories around Thanksgiving and football?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, for my end, football with three boys that played football, it's been a big part of our life and a part of our Thanksgiving. I think even I rewind to kind of my college days, coming home, from fall break from UVA, and we'd always have the turkey bowl, and all of us would meet up at Patty Elementary in Dumfries and play tackle and be super sore the next week, right? So I think right now, though, Julian, my football memories or football traditions are one that I want to break, with UVA constantly losing to Virginia Tech every single year. So hopefully we have a breakthrough this year and we can break that tradition. So
That's an amazing tradition that they always play these local rivalries. In soccer, we call these derbies or derbies, but we always play these Pitt versus West Virginia, Tech versus UVA, all over the country. I think Alabama, Auburn, maybe, but they always play the Saturday or even the Friday after Thanksgiving. That's an amazing tradition. I hope that's something that we keep going, even as these conferences are ruining college football. But how about you? How about you, Jason? What about your? Are you guys
Absolutely.
down in Goochland?
Yeah, absolutely. Backyard football was it on Thanksgiving, just a bunch of random kids, some I knew, some I didn't, finding a field somewhere, hoping it was pouring down rain or maybe even some possible snow, and getting muddy and having to strip all of our clothes when we get in, and then sitting down and catching some football. Of course, the late game wasn't, they didn't have a night game back then. It was just the Lions at 12:30 and the Cowboys at 4:30. But I just always remember thinking too about those two teams always playing, the Lions at 12:30. You could set your watch by. If you didn't have if you came out of nowhere, didn't know what time it was, and you turned on the TV and the Lions were getting ready to kick off, you could say it's 12:30 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving. You just knew that, and that tradition continues today. And my kids grew up with it. We would just eat and watch football and play football, and it there's something about the pureness of all of that. It takes away all the other noise that we all have in our lives, and it's great to have. And I think, it connects people like us, that didn't know each other before we started chatting, a couple years ago, and we have something in common. And that's, I think most people in our society do. And I think the same thing, you just connect with folks and you enjoy some commonalities and love football and food. And it's, to me, it's probably my favorite holiday as a result. So
Without question, it doesn't have the pressure of Christmas, and even though the Christmas is coming, so that kind of spirit is in the air. But I love Thanksgiving. I just in Detroit is actually good in football now, so we don't turn that game on and see a blowout like we used to see unless Barry Sanders was playing. Well, guys, I just really hope that we can put this Hayfield thing behind us a little bit. I have a lot of respect for Coach Overton and all their fans, and I'm sorry this happened. But this to me was always a 50-50, and it broke the other way, and I think we have to accept it. And I hope we can get back to the football. I'm exhausted by the VHSL Hayfield thing. People always try to put me on one side or the other, and which is it's a little frustrating. But I just hope we can put that behind us. And there's some great games this weekend. I think I'm going to catch West Springfield, Lake Braddock tonight. Definitely going to catch Madison and Washington Liberty on Saturday. And I haven't decided about Friday night yet, but I'll be out there somewhere on Friday night as well. So, but look, guys, thanks again. And Brian, enjoy Lake Anna, I believe, Brian. You guys are at Lake Anna?
Aston. Yep, Lake Aston in North Carolina.
Okay. Oh, wow. You're far away. How about you? How about you, Jason? Are you local?
For Thanksgiving, and we're actually traveling to see my brother and his family. They'll be down they live in Richmond. So
okay. Well, good. Well, look, guys, safe travels again. Thanks for all your insight, and appreciate you taking time to have a busy week. And maybe let's get together before either the semis, or we'll get together before the final. Maybe end the season off right.
Yeah, we'll do it. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you guys.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, Julian and Jason.
Hey, guys, enjoyed it, man. Have a good one.